Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Joshua McElwee, NCR's news editor for the National Catholic Reporter. Thanks so much for joining us for our special live event today on Pope Francis's vision for the Synod of Bishops. Just about 2 weeks ago, Pope Francis officially launched a new two-year-long process for conversation, listening, and discernment at every level of the Catholic Church. This process is going to take part in 3 phases. First, in each diocese around the world, then at the continental level, and finally during a formal meeting of bishops and others in Rome, known as a synod in October 2023. The entire process is taking place under the theme, For a Synodal Church, Communion, Participation, and Mission. We've invited 2 guests today to help us explore both how the U.S. dioceses are undertaking this first local phase of the synod process and the Pope's wider vision for participation and listening in the global church. Our first guest today is Sister Katie Eiffe, a member of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, who is the Director of Synodal Planning for the Diocese of Syracuse, New York. In that role, Sister Eiffe is helping Bishop Douglas Lucia organize Syracuse's first phase of the synod process. Eiffe has previously also served as the Director of Syracuse's Office of Faith Formation. Say welcome to Sister Eiffe.
Thank you.
Our second guest is hopefully going to be San Diego Bishop Robert McElroy, who has led the Diocese of San Diego, California since 2015. During his time in that diocese, McElroy has also hosted 2 local synods, one on family issues in 2016 and one on young people in 2019. Bishop McElroy is having some connection issues, but he's hoping he's going to be able to join us shortly, and we'll go forward when he joins. As we get started, just a reminder to everyone taking part, this is an interactive event. We welcome your questions. Please feel free to put those forward. If you're watching on Facebook, you can put your questions in the comments online, and we'll try to get to as many as we can in the half hour we have together. So I think we'll ask, obviously, Sister Eiffe a question first. I was wondering, Sister, you spoke to our staff writer, Brian Fraga, a few weeks ago about how the Syracuse Diocese is preparing for this first local phase of the Synod. You called the process a wonderful opportunity to live out what Vatican called us to 60 years ago as a church. What do you see this process created by Francis as helping the church live out? What's your biggest hope for what might happen in these next 2 years?
Well, as you may know, there are many different models of church. Vatican II seemed to focus on the model that is a familiar term, I think, to many, many people, which is that we are the people of God. And we are first and foremost, of course, disciples of Jesus Christ. And we are the people of God. And the whole concept of synodality is an attempt to engage the people of God as our bishops prepare for the World Synod of Bishops that you mentioned, Josh, in October of 2023. Synodality is an ancient process, an ancient way of being church. It was the way the early church operated. But over the centuries, it seemed to fade out. But Vatican II, Pope Paul VI, after Vatican II, reinstituted the concept of the Synod of Bishops. And so since Vatican II, there have been 15 world assemblies of the Synod of Bishop. The one in 2023 will be the 16th General Assembly. For those first 15, the preparation has been pretty much limited to the bishops themselves. Now, many bishops may have consulted with the people in their diocese as preparation, but it wasn't a formal part of the process. Pope Francis has asked that it be a formal part of the process this time, that the bishops should engage the entire people of God in their dioceses as a way of preparing for the bishops, but also as a way of hearing from the people of God. What are their hopes and dreams for our church? Some biographers of Pope Francis have talked about synodality as Francis's dream for the church. So the, the goal is to hear from the people of God. What are your dreams and hopes for our church in this third millennium? And also to express whatever hopes, whatever concerns they may have about our church in this difficult time in the world, you know. So that's how I see it, as responding to the call of Vatican II to be church as the people of God. Everyone by their baptism has a role to play in proclaiming the gospel, in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. And that's the dream, I believe, of Pope Francis. And it's certainly, if I may say, the dream of our Bishop Lucia. He is very, very much engaged in this and anxious to participate in this process of consultation.
Thank you for sharing that. It gives a nice overview of kind of what a synod is, what the vision is, and the past experience of living a synod. I'm curious, as someone tasked with leading this process in a local diocese, where there's meant to be this consultation, this kind of period from now until I think February, March of kind of consulting with people about what their hopes and dreams are, or what might bring up at the synod in Rome or at the continental level. Kind of how is that unfolding for Syracuse? In your experience, what's that involving? What's it taking? And kind of what are your hopes for it?
Well, we are in the very beginning stages of preparation. I was hired in August to be the director of synodal planning. And so I'm learning as I go. But we have established a process of scheduling listening sessions. Our diocese is divided into what we call pastoral care areas, where parishes in similar geographic location to each other try to work together. So we're establishing listening sessions in each of the pastoral care areas. Now, the challenge in Syracuse, of course, is we have to submit a report to the USCCB in mid-April. So our listening sessions are being held for the next 4 or 5 months: November, December, January, February, March. We live in the snow belt, so we're praying for a gentle winter, because in order to be able to allow the people to come to the listening sessions, we're just hoping that the timing of them in the winter here will not be a problem for us. So that's our first step, to establish the listening sessions. And we've had good response from our pastors in terms of working with us to find dates for their particular area.
Mm-hmm. I was struck by a comment you made in another Catholic publication to Our Sunday Visitor, and you said the synod process should involve not only kind of mass going or daily active Catholics, but also those who may have stopped going to mass, or maybe left the church, or have some experience that is keeping them away. How are you hoping this process might reach out to them? Do you have some hope for the impact those kinds of persons might have on the discussions?
Absolutely. And this is, of course, all in response to the Holy Father's desire that as many people as possible be consulted. It's right now, for me, it's the greatest challenge. How do we reach out to those who are not coming to church, for whatever reason? And because our time frame is so short in terms of scheduling these, at least this first round of listening sessions, that is our biggest challenge. And we're trying to work with our parishes first, but also to find vehicles for inviting not only Catholics who have perhaps stopped going to church, but the goal, the ideal, of course, is to also engage other Christian communities and non-Christian communities, so it can be an ecumenical effort. But that's our challenge right now, and we're working to discover, if I could put it that way, ways to reach out to those varied groups, but in particular to those who may, have again, stopped going to church for many, many reasons. We want to hear their voices as well. We want to invite them back to church and to welcome them and let them know that they are wanted and loved as part of our church.
I wonder if for someone, who maybe doesn't follow the Vatican closely or doesn't know what a synod is or has never watched a Synod of Bishops, kind of how do you explain what it is, what's central about it? We hear the Pope Francis has often said it's not a parliament, it's not an occasion to, to kind of vote on issues and come up with a,
Right.
like a Congress or something. But I wonder kind of how you explain it.
Well, the word synod itself literally means journeying together. Okay, so it's a way, again, since Vatican II, the bishops have, perhaps a more familiar word to people would be collaborated with the Holy Father in serving the entire church, the universal church. And each bishop is responsible, of course, for his local diocese, his particular church. So, but as I said before, the preparation for the synods up until now has really been kind of internal. And it's important, I think, to say that this vision of church, this synodal process, as the Holy Father has called it, does not in any way abrogate the authority of the bishops. They are the successors of the apostles. They continue to hold the authority in the church, but their deliberations and their decisions, of course, we pray, are guided by the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Father has said, but let's engage the people of God. Let's hear from them what their needs are, what, again, as I said, what their hopes and dreams are and what their concerns are. So it doesn't in any way negate or abrogate the role of the Holy Father and the bishops in our church, but it invites the rest of the baptized who by baptism have received the gifts of the Spirit by baptism and confirmation, and who have a right, a phrase that the Second Vatican Council used was that as baptized Christians, we have a right and a responsibility to participate in the workings, if you will, the governance, if you will, of the church. And thus the theme for the synod: communion, participation, and mission. We are in communion with God and with one another. We participate in the workings of the church, and we have a role to play in the mission of proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ.
That's a lovely summary. We have a couple of questions coming in from people watching us on Facebook and YouTube. I'm seeing two questions that kind of are similar, so maybe I'll ask them together.
Okay.
A man named Peter is wondering how high school students could participate in this synod process. And another person is asking kind of how to get the reach beyond the parish level to involve people who maybe aren't going to parishes.
Mm-hmm. Well, in our diocese, we are making arrangements to hold listening sessions specifically for our high school students in our Catholic high schools, but also to work with our diocesan director of youth ministry and the diocesan director of catechesis to gather high school students who may attend public schools, to have an opportunity for them, to create an opportunity for them to gather and to hold a listening session with them and for them. It's often said that the youth are the future of the church. Well, our belief is the youth are not the future of the church. They are the church, just as we are. So we are making arrangements in our planning for listening sessions to hold listening sessions in our Catholic high schools, and then to create, in collaboration with the other offices who minister to this age group, to have perhaps we've talked about perhaps having a dinner, with the bishop and allowing them to come and speak their hopes and dreams. But we haven't finalized the details on that yet. And then again, in terms of reaching out to the other parishes, other areas, that's a challenge that we're working with right now, but we haven't, I can't say that we have a specific process yet for reaching out beyond our parishes. Certainly one example, we will hold a listening session with our diocesan pastoral council, and we're hoping for their assistance and advice in terms of how to do that. And we'll work with the other diocesan offices and the various audiences that they serve to try to do that. And most particularly, the Holy Father has asked, to reach out to those who are marginalized. We're hoping to work perhaps with Catholic Charities to create opportunities for that. But we don't have specific plans yet.
Kind of a specific question we're getting is kind of what involvement the bishop himself might have in the listening sessions. I understand there's a lot of time and commitment here, but if he might be able to attend some of them, or in your diocese.
Yes. Well, so far we have 21 time slots, if you want to put it that way, for listening sessions in these next few months. And I said to the bishop when I met with him recently, I said, well, Bishop, how many of the listening sessions do you intend to actually attend? And he said, oh, well, all of them. So I was thrilled. I thought that is wonderful. It certainly indicates his level of engagement in the synodal process. But it also limits our ability to schedule, of course, because he's involved in so many things and responsible for so many things. So we know that this first round, if you will, of listening sessions will not be the only time that our people have the opportunity to speak with our bishop. But his intention is to attend all of the listening sessions.
Another specific, I mean, that's an incredible commitment from the bishop to attend those.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Another question we're getting, and obviously this is still kind of a difficult time in terms of the pandemic, and some people are a bit worried about in-person meetings or maybe going to listening sessions. I wonder how you're planning for that, and the possibility of kind of virtual sessions or some way of involving people who might not want to come in person.
We have discussed that. Again, we haven't yet made specific plans for timing of those virtual sessions, but we know that that's an opportunity which will provide an opportunity for people who may be, because they have compromised immune systems or whatever, that they're not comfortable gathering yet in crowds. We are researching the possibilities for using technology to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I imagine it's a hard thing to organize, especially, you said you've been in the role since August. That's a quick turnaround in terms of organizing all of these things.
Yes.
We have a question from a user on YouTube asking kind of about, a specific issue or thing they would like to change in the church, the possibility of married priests. And I wonder kind of how you see this process in terms of those kind of specifics, or the hopes for church reform. And I wonder, what's the dynamic in terms of listening to those requests and kind of what happens from there?
Well, we certainly expect those kinds of questions. And again, one of the goals of the synodal process is that people have the courage and the freedom to speak honestly. And our bishop is certainly willing to listen. And the structure of the listening sessions is going to be such that it won't be a question-answer type of dynamic, because the bishop's role in this phase of the synodal process is literally to listen, and to listen from his heart to the people of God who we hope will speak from their hearts. So, those types of concerns are free to be raised, but the bishop will not respond in the moment, okay, because his goal is to listen, and he doesn't intend to speak other than a very brief introductory remarks at the listening sessions. And then it's the opportunity for the people to speak and for him to listen. And so as we, send out information about the listening sessions, we'll make that structure known to the people who come, so that they're not disappointed that the bishop doesn't give an immediate answer to their particular questions. But the goal is to hear from the people of God first. And so he does not intend to engage in a in question answer type of format. The format is for the people of God to speak and for him to listen.
I'm remembering what Pope Francis said at the beginning of I think it was the 2014 Synod on Family, when he called on the bishops in the hall to speak boldly and listen with humility. So it sounds a bit like what you're describing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a word that's used in the preparatory document about inviting people and encouraging people to speak freely, boldly, and courageously. And the word is parrhesia. I think it's Parrhesia. I had to look it up, but that's what it means, to speak boldly, freely, and courageously. And that's our hope.
We're getting a number of questions about individual Catholics concerned that maybe their diocese is not doing enough in terms of the synod, or that there is kind of an uneven response in terms of some dioceses are very involved and some aren't. I kind of wonder, from your perspective, if there's been any coordination with other dioceses, or if I imagine there's overlap in terms of a Catholic might go to your diocese in New York or maybe a nearby diocese. I kind of wonder what that's like.
Well, I've had questions from a few other dioceses, mostly from, the folks in the pews. We have not, as a state, for example, done any coordinated planning, which, again, we're at the very beginning stages. That may come. I did read a disturbing, to me, statistic the other day, that there are 196 dioceses in the United States, and 62 of them have appointed a point person for the synod. So that was a little discouraging, but we continue to invite. The Holy Father continues to exhort, and we hope that many more dioceses will participate.
Thank you. I want to welcome Bishop McElroy, who's been able to join us.
Hello,
I'm very
Bishop.
sorry for the connection issues.
Great.
We've just been having a nice conversation with Sister Eiffe about a lot of the work they're doing in the Diocese of Syracuse to prepare this listening process, and what Bishop Lucia there is doing in terms of, I think she said 21 listening sessions the bishop has committed to go to.
Yes.
But now that you're with us, we're so grateful to have you here. I wondered if, as someone who's had this unique experience of leading 2 synods in your local church, and then also being a member of the synod for the Amazon region at the Vatican, I guess 2 years ago, could you explain kind of how you see the nut of this synod process, what's most important about it, and what's so central to it for the Pope?
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about the technological. Our firewall was apparently blocking this. But anyway, so it's good to be with you. Yes, to me, the key to synodality, as we've experienced it in our 2 synods, one on young adult life and the other on marriage and family life, and then having been at the Amazon Synod, is that it's not a structure or a way of decision making per se. It is a way of being church, and I want to make that a little clearer by pointing to a couple of moments that have occurred in our present. One was when we were doing the marriage and family life on the very contentious issue of LGBT issues, where that falls in and so forth. There was a wonderful sharing in the committee and then with the larger synodal gathering on this, where people shared their stories of family life, of members of their family who were members of the LGBT community. That didn't take away all the issues of division, but it allowed a level of sharing and a sense of an ability to tackle this question in the context of feeling unified in doing so. And it was very powerful. It was similarly when we were dealing with the question, the footnote 8 on Morris, on the divorce and remarriage question. A question came up about conscience. And so we had theologians as part of our process. One of the theologians talked a bit about the Catholic teaching on conscience. It was like a revelation to people. And these are the people who were at the synod tended to be the more, of course, educated and active and attentive Catholics. But it was a revelation to them what our notion of conscience was. And we spent a lot of time on that didn't contribute to specific decision making, but it was a wonderful moment of being open to what Catholic teaching is and sharing it on an evocative and an affective level. So to me, what this particular synod is about, most importantly, is all those goals of listening, of inclusion of the people on the margins, particularly of understanding how we are called to understand the Spirit is the one leading us. We don't convince each other. It's not a debating society. It's not a parliament. It's different. That the moments we had in our glimpses of this in our synodal process were really wonderful. And I think what the Pope is asking us to do is to make those glimpses more a reality in our church life at all levels on an ongoing basis. Now, does that mean we're going to reach nirvana? No, it doesn't. But it does mean, when in preparation, we had consultations with our diocesan pastoral council, our presbyteral council, our deans, and the curial leaders. And in those consultations, there was a sense we're not going to get to nirvana, but we can make real progress. And that at all levels, we need to move in these directions and try to integrate them. And that's more important than any particular decision-making outcomes. I think synodality isn't as concerned with the decisional outcomes as it is with how you get there, because how you get there forms you as the people of God in important ways.
That's really interesting, and I like what you say about the role of conscience and not being so tied to decision-making outcomes. I was very interested in what you said at the Mass last Sunday, opening your local diocesan phase of the Synod. And in your homily, you said this Synod process, quote, must be steeped in a sense of surrender that calls the whole of our local church to profound self-examination and renewal, end quote. What kind of things do you think your diocese, other dioceses need to examine as part of this process? How far-reaching do you think this goes?
Well, at the beginning of the two synods that we had in the diocese, I said at the opening sessions for them, I will accept and endorse the conclusions you come up with as long as they do not contradict, doctrinal issues. And other than that, if the consensus emerges, I will endorse it and we will run with it as a diocese. So I think surrender means not just the bishops say that, but people in general saying, I'm not coming into this looking for specific outcomes. I'm not coming into it looking to advance my points of view. I'm coming into it as a communitarian effort to discern where God's calling us to be. And surrender also means an openness to what topics emerge, what conclusions emerge, that we don't expect and may be uncomfortable with. So I think it's surrender in that sense. But we're not I'm not surrendering
Mhm.
my authority.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it's not a surrender to the people of God. It's surrender to God's leading the people
Mhm.
of our local church in a particular way. And that's a surrender I think we all have to say. We're surrendering to God's leadership in a profound way that we don't always, usually at the beginning of, I'll have to say this, when I was a pastor, we have an opening prayer, and that's kind of perfunctory. We do that, and then we move on to the decision-making part, and a whole different aura comes over our meeting. But this is not that. This is meant to be that sense of surrender to God and God's presence in it suffuses the meeting. And I have to say, uh, uh, we have to work hard to make that happen.
Mhm.
I think we have about time for one more. I know Sister Eiffe has to leave us shortly here. Before you were able to join Bishop McElroy, we were talking a bit about trying to reach out to different groups of people with this process. Catholics who maybe don't come to Mass every week or aren't so involved in the church, or younger people. In the comments here, we're hearing from people who are curious how you might want to reach out to women in terms of this process and to make them feel more involved. Or I don't know if there's another group of people you're really worth thinking about in San Diego in terms of making sure they have a voice in the synod process.
Uh, I think one of the groups that's important to me that we reach out to are, I remember when I was studying history in college, there was an analytical category called the inarticulate, the
Mhm.
people whose voices aren't heard.
Mhm.
In history, they're not heard because they didn't write it. They didn't. And of course, many of our people who are dispossessed and marginalized are not inarticulate. They can be
Mhm.
very eloquent, but their
Mhm.
voices are often not heard. And so we're struggling in our process to find ways of inclusion, particularly for those groups which are large in our society. Now we've appointed a commission to oversee it. We're going to do a longer term process for about a year and a half. And so to on that commission, we have representatives of those who work with the homeless, the incarcerated, the immigrant groups, and the refugees. So
Mhm.
as a prelude to drawing in conversation during this process, those groups. So those groups are very much in my mind. Women, in our synodal processes, we have had large groups of women. This commission we have is half women, half men. So our synods have naturally drawn in large numbers of women in the synod process as they exist. But I think it will be on questions pertaining to women. I think there'll be a lot of them servicing in this context too.
Well, I want to be conscious. I know that Sister Eve has to leave shortly. I want to say thank you to all of our viewers. Maybe we can do one quick lightning round here from each of you. In a phrase or two, what is your big hope for this 2-year long synod process? Sister Eve, do you want to go first?
In a phrase or two, huh? Um, I noticed in one of the questions there was something about unity in the church. So I think that's a good response. Yes, that we hope by engaging all the people of God, we will not only enhance the unity we have, but perhaps provide a model to our nation and our world who seem to be, everything seems to be so divisive these days. So I guess my hope would be for unity in the church, and of course for a renewal of our discipleship, for a renewal of our commitment to Jesus and to his mission.
Bishop McElroy, do you have a big hope?
I'd say I have two. One is the Gallup group did a study some years ago. Why do people continue their participation in the life of the church? It was across religions, okay? But the basic answer was the one criterion that meant more than anything else was people continue to be involved in the life of their communities if they felt, if they didn't, someone would notice it and miss them. That was so interesting, so human. So my first goal would be that if we can begin to build communities more where everyone counts and feels counted. Now, and I think we can do that, without being idealistic. I think we can do that. But that and the second is if we can, in all, particularly our process of discernment, make them true discernment where we affectively understand and act as if God is in charge, not us. That would be two wonderful outcomes, I think.
Well, we will acknowledge that God is in charge and that firewalls can cause problems sometimes.
Yes. Yes. I was looking for the patron saint of firewalls, but I couldn't find it.
Well, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. We're very grateful. We're very grateful to Sister Eiffe and to Bishop McElroy for joining us. Thank you also to our behind-the-scenes staff, Stephanie Yeagle and Shannon Evans, who helped produce this event. You can be sure that we at NCR will be covering all 3 phases of this synod process very closely. So be sure to check our coverage at ncronline.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. And we'll be happy to see you next time on our NCR Live. So thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great day and get involved in the synod.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all very much, God bless.